What's up guys, my name is Dragon, and today I'm going to be talking about what kind of satisfactory start you should pick depending on what things you want to do with the game. Now with the 1.0 release, I imagine a lot of people are picking up the game, and with all of the changes that they made to node spawns and how things work, I imagine a lot of people may be questioning where is the best place to start. And obviously that varies per person, but I feel like there is definitely some better options, especially if you're newer to the game. But of course, before we get into it, if you guys do enjoy today's video, then do let me know down in the comments below. And also make sure to hit the subscribe button, as it will definitely help me out a ton. So right now we are in the grass field, which is the very first start that you will see whenever you load up the main menu. And personally, this is not my favorite spawn, although it is very good. The only problem I have with it is the vast expanse of it and how big it is and how far resources can be from one another, which makes things like giant belt chains going through the entirety of the forest very, very common. Now there is a lot of empty space that you can use. There's a lot of flat areas you can clear out, especially around this point on the map. And there's some decent water access nearby, but nothing too crazy to write home about. Although there is a very good spot to set up a coal power plant, which is right over here in this little sinkhole area. So overall, to me, the grass fields is about a 7 out of 10. It's better if you are just starting out the game, as there's not really that many enemies around. It'll be harder for you to die, and it is very flat, meaning fall damage won't be as much of a problem, as well as just the abundance of things like trees and wood and other plants that you can pick up and use for any of the generators that you're building. It does make it quite a decent start if you're new to the game, but there are better choices if you already know what you're doing. And the next start is here in the rocky desert, and this is personally my favorite place to spawn in at. There is a bunch of flat land to build on, not too many hills, a lot of drop pods nearby so you can get a lot of easy alternate recipes, water access right off the gates, and a lot of decent nodes around the place that you don't have to travel too far to. And of course, one of the main reasons why I do spawn in this point. You can easily walk up these hills and walk up this stone way up into the grasslands, where near this cliff you will find 3 pure coal nodes. With coal and water pretty much right next to each other, it makes this spot up here a perfect place to build your first coal power plant. And if you have started watching my series on the 1.0 update, that is exactly what I do. But of course, with the rugged terrain, it does make getting up and down a little bit harder, so you can rely on things like parachutes to get down from really high up places, and there's actually a really easy way to go about that. Near your spawn, if you go up the hill a little bit over to the mountain, you will see this nice little cave that has opened up right here. And inside of this cave, once you get past these little trees, will be a place where you can harvest a bunch of the mycelia, where then you can turn it into one of those parachutes, and you can easily get that done relatively quickly into the game as well. And one other good thing is directly outside of the cave on the other end, you will find another drop pod. Very, very easily accessible, although it is defended by a few kind of strong things, mainly that guy right there. He will mess you up pretty bad if you aren't prepared for him. But other than that, there's only 2 nests, and the resources you get around it are very, very nice. Modular frames, stators, more stators, and even some rubber. So it is very, very nice to get that, and that only requires 150 megawatts to open, meaning you can get that open fairly early into the game as well. And if you keep following the sand all around to this overhang, you will also find another limestone node, which is pure this time, a little bit of water access, and 2 quartz nodes, which are also both pure. So getting blade runners early on is super easy with the quartz nodes up there, and the modular frames over here at this drop pod. You can just run over, mine quartz, grab these modular frames, and run back to your molecular analysis machine and research that almost instantly. So lots of options on where you want to expand to, and lots of options on how to get resources back to your base, meaning central building is very easily done. So if you're one that does not like to explore too far out from where your base is and likes to bring all the resources back in to a central processing facility, this is definitely the spawn for you. And because that's personally how I play, where I don't like to expand out too far, I'd give this personally a 9 out of 10. It would be a 10 out of 10, but the rugged terrain is a little bit rough to get around, especially if you're new to the game and don't know how to exactly climb up things super easily. So next up is the Northern Forest, and I have never personally started a game here, but it does look, at least to me, like it would be very confusing to try and traverse through this place, as there is a bunch of trees everywhere, a bunch of trees that I imagine you can't get rid of, and a lot of different terrain that might be really, really difficult to try and build on, especially if you're building bigger factories. It makes things a little bit awkward to try and build with, especially because it seems as if there is a constant slope down to this side of the map over here. Now there's a lot of good stuff around here. There's water access, there's a drop pod really close to your spawn. There's a nice, decent little place to build a little bit of production, although it is not the greatest. Overall, it is very pretty, it is a very nice atmosphere to look at, but for building things and making quite large factories, I imagine this wouldn't be the spot to pick from the other spawn locations that you could pick, just because of the amount of cliffs and trees that make it really difficult to try and build up a large factory, especially in the early game, whenever you don't have things like chainsaws unlocked yet. So overall, for me, it's going to be a 4 out of 10. Just because of the terrain itself, it seems very rough to try and get a start off here compared to the other two spots. Especially if you're new to the early game, then it would even drop to maybe a 2 out of 10. Just because of how rough the terrain is. Although that's not to say there's nowhere to build. There's definitely a few places where building a factory is 100% possible, especially with a lot of the resources around here having water access. It means a lot of the machines that you could build, especially later on, will have the water they need. But to me, it just doesn't seem like big enough access to the factories that they want you to build, especially for things early on, like reinforced iron plate production, which can get quite big especially if you don't know what you're doing. And I imagine the danger in this forest is relatively high with all of these gas fields around, and just flying around seeing a lot of enemies kind of spawning in around the place makes it a little bit more challenging, especially for newer players. But if you have spawned here and do relatively enjoy it, then do let me know how it is in the comments below. I am interested in learning on what makes this place as good of a spawn as it could be. Maybe it's the amount of resources you have access to, maybe it's the water access, maybe it's the amount of wood you can gather up relatively quickly in a small area. I'm not 100% sure, but I would definitely like to know. So leave your thoughts down in the comments below, and I will try to look through all of them. And next up is the Dune Desert. Now, I've also never spawned in here, but I have seen people build some insane factories in the game. And with all the changes that they've made to how nodes spawn in, there are tons of resources everywhere for you to run around and gather up. If we fly up above the fields, you can see there is resource nodes everywhere across these dunes that you can easily gather up and build some pretty nice factories with. Although even with all those resources, water is a bit of a problem. With only a very select few spots being able to actually be pumped themselves, it does make it a very difficult start, especially for whenever you need coal power to progress. So it is definitely one to think about, as there is an abundance of resources everywhere, and it is super rich, but water will become an issue eventually. But if you don't mind making some pretty long pumps and pretty long pipe chains, then this could be a decent spot for you, as there is a pretty large ocean off to the one side of it, and a decent sized waterfall off to the other side where you can pump things down from. So overall, personally, I would say this is a 6.5 out of 10. Only reason being is that power production is one of the main problems people have to worry about, especially early on in the game. And with not that many trees or brush or any kind of foliage around, it'll be really hard to get enough to actually use the burner generators. And with the severe lack of water around, especially in the middle of the desert, it makes coal generators as well very difficult to use. Definitely a good spot to build a mega factory if you're already decently into the game, but for a start, I think there are better options. But of course, those are just my opinions. Do let me know down in the comments your own. And of course, every space has their own pros and cons to them, so you can choose for yourself how you want to start the game and go off of that. But these have just been my opinions on how things are currently in 1.0. If things change, then maybe I'll do another updated video on what spawns might be the best. But of course, I hope you guys enjoyed. If you guys did, do be sure to hit the subscribe button down below. And if you at all found this helpful, then do let me know down in the comments below what I could have done differently, what you liked about the video, anything like that. But that'll be it from me. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you have a good rest of your day or night, depending on where you are. And I will talk to you all later.